At the beginning of the webinar, Felicity asked you to complete the poll. While this is a fun poll, it does give us insights into you, our customers. As digital audio continues to grow at a rapid rate, it's critical that we continue to innovate. Amassing listener data is only the first step. Managing, analyzing, and extracting insights from it is where the payoff comes from. We spent a lot of time trying to understand the East Coast Radio and Jacaranda audiences and how to engage with them through content, events, competitions, and marketing. The conversation has always been one way, but through the qualitative data, it's become two. We ask and our listeners tell us what they think, want, and need. To be able to say to an advertiser that we know that 72% of our loyal East Coast Radio listeners are going to start a DIY project in the next 90 days, and this is the perfect time for that message to resonate with that audience, it's hard to argue with that. Since the start of South Africa's COVID-19 lockdown, ECR and Jacaranda have tapped into their first-party database of more than 100,000 users to understand the needs of their audience and how the pandemic has impacted them. What we have is a substitute for a loyalty program, as our listeners are engaging with us through different touch points. The ECR showtimes were changed based on the insights we collected in our listener and content survey sent out in April and May. The on-air and online content was tweaked to meet the needs of the audience. We learned people are consuming multiple content types. We learned people are consuming multiple content types across different platforms. Right now, our audience trusts us. We have been able to gain really interesting viewpoints into the interests, activities, behaviors, and intent of our audience, giving advertisers opportunity to target with contextual relevance, as well as apply best practice creative scenarios to each. When we ran the content surveys in April, the Jack and ECR audience showed an interest in a virtual music event. With this insight, Jacaranda partnered with Tracker to bring the first virtual multi-artist concert in South Africa, raising $350,000. The Good Morning Angels benefit concert was a major success, given that the concept was new to the audience and had a very limited time frame for promotion. We managed to reach over 1 million people with targeted advertising. Viewers from across South Africa and further afield were treated to a 2.5-hour concert. The event proceeds will not only support artists, but will also help Jacaranda FM's Breakfast with Martin Bester to assist those in need through Jacaranda FM Good Morning Angels. Other virtual events, such as the Women's Breakfast, are in the pipeline, guided by the insights from this survey. So have the listening habits changed? It's clear broadcasting has evolved. Loyalty is increasing and engagement is increasing. The change is on the device. If we look at the listening stats, our lockdown has increased radio listening from cars to digital, and in a poll we ran in early July, this view was confirmed when we noted listening had moved from just terrestrial radio to include streaming on desktop and the app. We know when people are listening to us as well. The listening survey conducted in April and followed up again in May gave us a clear indication of when our audience is tuning in. They are listening for more than 6 hours a day across multiple devices and starting from as early as 6 a.m., indicating we have a loyal listening audience across the day on both brands. Look at the fact that more than 70% of the Jack and ECR audience are turning to radio to hear promotions and sales adverts from their favorite retailers. And don't worry about data. In the telecom survey conducted in July, it was interesting to note that the Vodacom had more share of voice with the Jacaranda audience, while Telkom was the preferred network provider for the ECR audience. Perhaps here is a relationship between customer loyalty and the level of satisfaction in the services. When we look at the ISPs, Telkom dominates in the 2 provinces. However, this could be network coverage more than anything else. And we can't ignore that Rain, quite new in the market, is quickly making inroads. The majority of the Jack and ECR listeners are using mobile data to access the internet, with 36% of Jack's listeners using on average between 10 and 49 gigs a month, and 40% of ECR listeners using about 10 gigs a month. Our listeners are consuming online content at a high rate and are hungry for content that speaks to them. If we take a look at the consumer behavior slides, many businesses have found that most advertising works best when they are created to complement one another. By pairing 2 or more platforms together, like social media and radio, you'll be able to extend your reach and increase your overall return on investment. ECR and Jack have a highly engaged social media audience, And by using social media marketing to enhance the radio experience, you can visually bring your story to life. Our results regarding whether social media inspires buying behavior proves that brands need to consider digital advertising as a central part of their budgets and plans. With 58% of Jacaranda listeners and 63% of ECR listeners saying it inspires them, it would be detrimental to ignore it. More than half of respondents also said they are reliant on radio retail advertising to help them make purchasing decisions. Our audience has taken the time to tell us their thoughts and their plans. They trust us as a valued broadcaster and trustworthy online publisher. They've told us what kind of shopping they prefer, the online for KZN and in-store for Gauteng. And if they're interested in DIY or home improvement shopping, a big yes for both audiences. And when it comes to making purchases, more trust in cash than any other form of payment method. We saw this in the responses, with more than 60% of the Jack and ESA audiences preferring to pay for their purchases with cash. Next slide, please. Thank you. You might be wondering now how we've managed to get all this information from our listeners while following all POPI regulations and maintaining the privacy of our audience. We've collected through polls shared on the East Coast Radio and Jacaranda website, Hotjar heat maps, surveys shared on Facebook, and WhatsApp messages. We've also have access to the Low to Me DMP via AdsWiz. So these slides have shown how the consumer audience has changed and continues to change since the start of lockdown. We're in a great position to understand our audience and know what they want and need, and are using this information to build products, projects, and provide new avenues and options for our clients. Please remember, if you have any questions, please add them in the Q&A box. So I've given you a summary of how brands like East Coast Radio and Jacaranda are engaging the listeners to really understand audience needs and behavior. But now, I'd like to hand over to Mark Bertha, the head of digital at MediaMark, to give us an idea of how advertisers can tap into the power of these unique and engaged audiences.